through me. The board members will now introduce themselves, starting on my far right.
Harry Scott.
Jill Jameson.
Rochelle Harding.
Vi Sanford, Town Council.
Adam Driedzik.
Thank you, everyone. And if the clerk would introduce herself, and then I would ask the members of administration who are present to introduce themselves as well.
Robin Denodge, Manager of Communications.
I'm Marcus Henry, Supervisor of Planning.
Camila Ramos-Strankman, Junior Planner. Lauren Miller, Manager of Planning and Development.
Great, thank you.
Mike Wolfersog. I'm a next door neighbor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda as provided? No. I would then like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And just to confirm with the development officer, that we're going to be hearing DP 2019-081.
That is correct.
Great, thank you. Now, once again, I would like to ask, is there a member of the appellant who's here? Yeah, if you could please introduce yourself.
Chase Mullen with Coda Homes.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mullen. And will you be presenting?
We're the owners.
Great.
Sarah Kidner, Mark Kidner.
Welcome. Great. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Kidner. Now, is there anybody else that will be presenting on your behalf, or will you be presenting yourself? Great. Thank you. Now, I'd like to ask the appellant, and I'd have to, we have one mic here, and it's the one that picks up for the record. So, Mr. Mullen, if I could ask you just to come forward to the mic. I just need to ask a couple of questions and just make sure that we have it recorded. Do you have any objection to any of the board members hearing this appeal?
I don't, no.
Great, thank you. And have you received a copy of the agenda package distributed to the board?
Yes, I have.
Great, thank you. And do you have any objections to the information that was provided to you?
No.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you. You can have a seat now, thank you. So I'll just outline the hearing process. Will be as follows. First of all, administration will make a presentation. Then the appellant will speak in favor of the appeal, followed by any others who wish to speak in favor of the appeal, and including any correspondence in favor of the appeal. Then those speaking in opposition to the appeal and any correspondence in opposition to the appeal will be heard. Lastly, those speaking, if there are any, in neither favor nor opposition to the appeal and any related correspondence. At any time, the board may ask for clarification by any of the persons speaking to the appeal. We also may ask for a short recess if necessary. To close, administration will be asked if they wish to provide any clarification or closing remarks, followed by any clarification or closing remarks from the appellant. The board will then close the public portion of the hearing and go in camera, which is private, and review all of the information provided. That's where we'll make our decision, and the board will provide a written decision within 15 days following the hearing, although we tend to be quicker than that. The purpose of this hearing is for the appellant and affected parties to provide the board with information to the appeal. The board must base its decision on planning merits. As outlined a moment ago, affected persons will be given an opportunity to speak. Please ensure that all comments are directed to the board. Also, we would ask that all comments be of proper decorum and succinct. If any person has already made a point, simply state that you agree with the point and continue. And if anyone is presenting or referring to a written document, including a map, photographs, or a report, please leave a copy of those documents with the clerk. Does the appellant have any concerns with the process as outlined? Great, thank you. All right then let's begin. I would now ask the development officer to please make the presentation with respect to this appeal.
Hello, members of SDAB. My name is Camila Ramos-Strankman, and I'm here today to present to you DP 2019-081, an application for a duplex dwelling. So I want to start off by saying that the submitted report indicated incorrect days for our statutory requirements. These mistakes were caught earlier this week, and the board and the appellant were both sent corrected versions of this report. And what I have on the board right now indicates the correct days of our notices and letters, and all statutory requirements have been satisfied.
Thank you.
So the application was refused on June 10th, and the notice of appeal from the applicant was received on June 18th. And I would also like to note that the appellant's letter indicated my name as the agent for this appeal, and this was a mix-up, and I just want to identify that I am not the appellant's agent for this, and I am the development officer instead.
Thank you.
For your reference, this is located on Exhibit 1 of your package, if you're curious. Finally, notification letters were sent out on June 20th, and the hearing is today. So all statutory requirements have been met.
Great, thank you very much.
The property is located at 725 3rd Street in South Canmore. It's identified by the red square on the board. This property is located in an R2 residential family 2-unit district, which allows for duplex dwellings as a permitted use. There is a duplex to the west of the property and a single-family home to the east. To the north, there are some fourplexes, which are in an R4 district, and to the south is a lane that borders an R1 district, which has single-family homes. There is currently a single-family home for this lot, as well as a shed, and should this development be approved, both of those structures would be demolished. As mentioned, the proposal for this lot is a duplex. There are 2 variances which are being requested by this development, and they are to roof pitch and building height. I'll get to those in just a moment. Other than those 2 variances, the application is consistent with the regulations of the land use bylaw. So the first variance of this proposal is to roof pitch. The district states that all duplex dwellings are required to have a minimum roof pitch of 612 for a substantial majority of the roof area. All proposed roof areas are a 212 roof pitch, and therefore a variance is required. The second variance is to building height. The land use bylaw regulates that as roof pitches become flatter, buildings are required to lower their maximum height. And so for a 212 roof pitch building, the maximum allowable height would be 7.5 meters and not the usual 9.5 meters. So this 7.5 meter is measured by the orange line in the picture. And the applicant is requesting that the building be 9.5 meters tall, which would be permitted if the roof pitch was a 612 roof pitch or steeper, and that maximum height is represented by the blue line in that image. And so a 2-meter variance is being requested by this application. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that variance in just a moment, but first I want to show the massing model that the applicant has provided, if there are no questions about that. So this is the massing model as requested by our land use bylaw in order to help show the proposed impact of the building compared to a duplex that has a more traditional roof form. So in these images, the white building is the proposed structure and the colored building is theoretically what could be put on site. I only say theoretically because no actual review of that building has been done as part of this application. And so this image is from the lane looking towards the building. The next one is from the side. Again, the white is the proposed building and the colored is another option. And we have one more image showing the roof protrusions compared to a more traditional roof form. Unfortunately, no massing model showing the proposed roof from the front of the building has been provided. And let me know if I went too fast through this or if you guys are ready to move on. Okay, moving on. So now that we better understand the proposed building, I just want to elaborate on the height variance. The land use bylaw regulations limit the variance powers of development officers. And what it says is that where variances provide a community or neighborhood benefit, the development would not interfere with neighboring properties, the development authority only has the power to grant a 10% variance to building height. And I want to note that the Canmore Planning Commission is limited to grant variances up to 20% to building height. SDAB is not limited by these same percentages. So as the building is requiring a 2-meter variance to height, this is outside the variance powers of a development officer. I've tried to summarize the height variances for you in this chart. And so for a 212 roof pitch home, the maximum allowable height would be 7.5 meters. 10% of this limit, when added to the 7.5, would be 8.25 meters, meaning that the maximum height that, this is the maximum height that a development officer could approve. However, we would not be forced to approve it. It would depend on the rationale. In comparison, there's a 612 roof pitch house where it could be constructed to a 9.5 maximum, and I've just inputted what the 10% variance would be if that would come, just for your consideration. And so just a summary of these considerations, the variance to building height is beyond the 10% of the variance power of the development authority. The applicant has provided a massing model showing the potential impact of their proposal compared to similar building with a different roof form. And the rationale for the proposed variance has been provided by the applicant as well. It's part of the package. And there have been 2 letters in opposition of the development. And so, in conclusion, we lack the ability to grant this variance. SDAB has the options to either uphold the decision of the development authority or approve the development permit subject to Schedule A conditions, and a draft Schedule A has been provided for you for your consideration. And this concludes my presentation. I'll be willing to answer any questions that you have today.
Great, thank you very much. I look to my colleagues to see if there are any questions. Yes? Yeah, go ahead.
It's my understanding that those massing models are to show shading on the neighboring properties. Is that not the case?
So not necessarily. Massing could just show the mass of the building, not necessarily shade, or the proposed impact to other neighbors. So this one has not shown shading coming from the sun.
Is that a typical expectation of the planning department, though?
Yeah, this would be standard for what we would expect to see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Adam?
So if I understand this, the black roof is an alternative for comparison? Is that
Yes.
right? Now, is that alternative being proposed by the development applicant as an alternative means to get a development permit, or is that simply for comparative purposes?
It's simply for comparative purposes. We cannot approve an option when we review a development permit. So it has to be very clear about what we are approving, not A or B or maybe C.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford?
I did have the same question as Adam. Also, they're not asking for, is there any eave overhang considerations? Like, are the eaves within the
The
setback
eaves are all
requirements?
within the allowable amount. There are no other variances being
Okay,
proposed.
so just the 2 variances
2.
are being requested. Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, and this may be a little bit picky, but with regards to the height variance calculation, I see how it's 26.6% that you've calculated, but I'm just noting that the actual section of the bylaw doesn't give a particular height. It gives a reference to the 612 height, and it's to be reduced to reach the other heights. So in fact, it's 100% of the reduction that is being sought here, correct? The entire 2 meters between 612 and 212 is what's being sought as a reduction, or as a variance.
So what the interpretation is and as you can see from what's on the board of what the bylaw states, is that when the roof pitch is proposing a 212 roof pitch, the maximum height would be the 9.5 minus the 2 meters, giving us the 7.5. And so that has been interpreted, that would be the maximum, not the 9.5. And so that's where that a 10% increase would be measured from.
I'm just noting that the section that we are looking at, it is intended that 212 is to be 2 meters lower than 612. And so it is the entirety of that reduction that is being sought as a variance. It's 100% variance of that reduction.
Yes.
Okay, great. I did have a question about the conditions that were proposed. Let me just get there. So on the conditions, there's an off-site charge for one residential unit. Is
Yeah.
that because it's not subdivided, or why is it one and when there's obviously two residential units being proposed?
So the options for us to collect off-site levies are either at subdivision or through a development permit. And so it's standard for us to collect those through a development permit, which would be required for this one. And then we would capture the off-site levies for that additional unit now. The board could choose to postpone
Okay,
that to
because this
subdivision.
is, so this is in addition to what's been captured before, that's why it's only one.
Yes, exactly. There's a current unit on site, and this would be adding another unit onto that site.
Great, thank you, that makes sense. And I just note that there's a numbering problem too in the permit. It goes 9, 10, 11, then back to 9. So we'd obviously, if we approve this, we'll correct that.
Thank you.
Is it any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Now I'd ask the appellant to make your presentation with respect to the appeal. Mr. Mullen.
Dear members of the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board, my name is Chase Mullen. I'm with Cova Homes. Thank you for your time to review and hopefully approve our development at 725 3rd Street. Kidner Homes is a reputable builder who has contributed to develop Canmore for the past 28 years. We are requesting to appeal the town's decision to refuse our application. We feel the current land use bylaw needs some thoughtful variation from its current design standards. Otherwise, we are at risk of producing a cookie-cutter community. By approving these variances, designers can create more diversity and visual interest while maintaining views for neighboring properties. We are requesting 2 variances. The first one is to the roof slope, which is section 2.8.6A. We are requesting a variance to roof slope because mountain modern homes are designed with lower slopes to create a sense of flat roofs. I have thoughtfully designed the loft floor away from the side yards to reduce overall massing and shadowing on neighboring properties. The second variance is to the height and the stories. We are requesting a 2-meter variance to building height, as the mountain modern home does not comply with the current land use bylaw. Our current roof height does not exceed a traditional 612 roof. To compensate the low slope roof, we have designed that loft floor again away from the side yards to reduce our overall massing. Thus, shadowing on the neighboring properties will be reduced. The massing diagram that we have provided will show that a traditional 612 roof can create more massing than that of a 212 roof. As shown in this massing here, this is actually comparable to a project I designed last year and is currently being built. And this project went through without any variances or any a DP either. It went straight through building permit. So this is another duplex, and this specific project did meet all the bylaws. As you can see, the massing of both projects is roughly the same, if not in favor of this current application. And please note that that application is actually almost 500 square feet smaller than these specific units, as that's a total between 2 units.
Sorry, can you just clarify that point?
So our specific application,
Yes?
Is-
The white?
the white, is about 500 square feet bigger in square footage than this proposed, than that one that was just built this last year.
Oh, then the other one that you were talking about
Yeah.
elsewhere. Okay.
So please do accept this appeal to prove our design, because we do feel that the current land use bylaw does restrict us as designers to design mountain modern homes. We are afraid that if we continue on with what we have, we may just see alpine style roofs everywhere, which are appealing, and it is nice to see variation, but we do like to see that variation with the mountain modern home. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm sure there are some questions. Just on that, I just want to make it clear that, because something has been done elsewhere doesn't mean that we are
No, for sure.
required. Further, anything we decide here is a one-off, because it doesn't change the bylaws, doesn't change anything going forward. So let's say tomorrow somebody was to propose the exact same thing within the same neighborhood, I assume that the same result, it would be greater than the variances would be allowed, and it'd have to come to the SDAB. And we would not be bound by this decision, right? So I just wanted to make sure that, it's, you know, when you're talking about setting, you know, opening things up, it won't do that.
Yep.
But
It's more of as a comparable to show that the
Right.
process we had to go through to get this design for a certain massing versus something that has gone straight through building permits that takes 3 weeks.
Great. And now I'll open it up to questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions? Did you do any work on estimating the shading on neighboring properties and the difference between
It is an easy task for me to do after I have that, but I have not done so. And I've done it with previous projects, and typically the 612 roofs do create more shadowing.
It's looking like they would be at least comparable, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and with that design, I mean, we technically could build more dormers off of that roof itself within the bylaw.
Right. Okay. Yes. Ms. Harding.
Just more of an opportunity for you to elaborate on something to help us with this decision. One of the variances that you're asking for has a requirement in the land use bylaw that the variance provides a community or neighborhood benefit and wouldn't unduly interfere. So the height change is the and part, but there's that added provides a community or neighborhood benefit. And I'm interpreting your presentation to say that you feel that the variety of architecture is the community benefit. Is there any further elaboration you'd like to make on that, just to hammer home that point, if that is the case?
Yeah, I mean, within the area, it's nice to have variation so it doesn't look like a suburb of Calgary or something you've seen of that sort. So it is nice to have that variation. As far as it goes to helping the rest of the residents out, I would say it does not, as it is a specific development to this place for a duplex.
Great, thank you. Good question. Mr. Jameson.
Just so I understand more clearly, from your plan there,
You can just hit it and
leave it. The top loft, there's not a decking coming off the loft.
There's not, no.
It's just enclosed.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor Sanford.
Yeah, I'm just a bit confused about, you are representing Kova Homes?
I'm representing Kidner Homes, and I'm a designer as well as a builder, but
And so is Kova Homes a different company?
that is, yes.
Is that a design company?
It is a design and development
Oh,
company.
okay. So who's actually building this home then?
Kidner Homes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Adam?
Would you like to show us any of your design drawings apart from the massing model?
Any
There's-
design,
You've included, or at least the staff have included, some of your design drawings in here. And this would be an opportunity to show us. I'd be interested in seeing the one from the front of the house. Do you have
this
your?
is the front, actually.
Sorry.
From what was said with Camila, said that the front was not proposed, but this is actually the front elevation. So the rear elevation was the one that's not showing.
Okay. So you're comfortable relying on this massing model as your one depiction of your design?
I think at the end of the day is what I'm trying to show to you guys with max roof height is massing. That is pretty much what these rules have created for a low slope. So if you didn't have these rules in place, someone could come in with a 212 and build the whole lot and have very big massing walls on the side yard. So what the town has created with that bylaw is to restrict that, but also by restricting that, it has restricted the design of modern roofs. And being able to get that 2.5 story, third story on a duplex or a fourplex is always proposed for new development going forward.
Okay. Yeah, Adam, continue.
Well, if I understand you, it seems like the main community benefit that that you're arguing is the diversity of home styles that could be provided if we were to grant a variance. Do we have any evidence here, look at the neighborhood where we could see the different homes here, or what the street looks like, or what type of housing is available?
It does vary already. So it is within Mountain Modern and 612 pitches. I don't know on the other applications if they've requested any variances, but every project that I've done with anything low slope has always requested a variance just because of restricting bylaws.
Okay. Mr. Scott?
Are you saying that that is the front? Because does that not face the alley?
This does
And
not.
the front driveway is on Third Street?
That's correct.
So this is actually the back. This is facing the alley, is it not?
No, this is the front.
If you go to your site and landscape drawing, the driveway is in the front.
Driveways are on the front. Yeah, you just can't see the garage door because of the massing of the other model.
Oh, okay, so, I see. So
It's
it's the
just kinda
massing
hidden.
diagram that's, and yet you've got a
Overlaying
tree
this one.
right in front of the, right in front of the garage door
Yes.
on your massing diagram.
Well, in between the two driveways.
Okay. All right,
That would be a small pin tree that doesn't grow very large.
yeah.
Okay.
On this one, it looks large, on the massing diagram, but anyway, okay,
Okay.
So that would be shown right at that image would be the front.
okay.
Councillor Sanford?
So what benefit does the lower slope roof give you under the roof line? Do you get more square footage?
We absolutely get no extra square footage. We actually get less square footage because it creates less head height. So there's a lot of points where, you got to reduce the massing like I've done on the top floor to get that head height as well. So no, we could still build bigger if we were going to go 612 pitch.
But with 212, you get to add the loft area?
It's not
versus-
necessarily, again, square footage. It's more aesthetics and the looks than it is functionality.
Would you be able to add a loft with a 612 roof in a
Oh, yeah,
situation like
yeah.
this? Okay. So that's not what you're trading off here necessarily. It's more design?
It's absolutely pure design of the Mountain Modern aesthetic.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Mullen, for your presentation. I would now ask if there's any others who are speaking in favor of the appeal that would like to speak. Anyone speaking in favor? Seeing none. Mr. Kidner, if you'd like to say something, please feel free. Just come to the mic, please.
So I'm Mark Kidner, I'm the owner. So I think what we're after here is just trying to make an appealing building. We've been doing this, as he said, for almost 30 years in the valley, in Canmore, and our goal here is to make something attractive, something a little different, that fits in the neighborhood as opposed to just the 612 over and over and over again. Yeah, what else was I going to say? As far as the massing goes, we believe this, like Chase said, the massing is actually larger, generally larger with a 612 slope. And he's not, on his massing diagram, he's not actually building it out as large as it could be. You can put the 612 dormers all the way around without getting a variance. So we could create a lot more shade to the neighboring property, to me, without a question. So that's a point that's kind of been discussed, and what's the benefit? And to me, that's the benefit. It's actually a smaller scale building. It's more diversified. And we've done another one on 3rd Street, which I believe we had to do a development permit on as well. And I believe that's a very attractive looking building to me. I mean, everyone has their own preference, but We've done this before, and it's turned out, in my view, very nice. So that's what we're trying to do. Obviously, it's cheaper, and I make more money developing it as a 612. So it's not about money. It's more simple and cost-effective for me to do it within the guidelines. So, and this is not for myself. This is development property. So.
Thank you. Any
Anyways,
questions?
if anyone has any questions for me.
No? Thank you, Mr. Kidner. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk, is there any additional correspondence in favor of the appeal? Seeing none. So now I would ask those speaking in opposition to the appeal to come forward. And if there is somebody that wishes to do so, please give your name before making your presentation. And we have a sign, if you could write down your name so that we have proper spelling and everything for the record. So are there anyone who would wish to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here on behalf of myself, Linda Telgarski, and my husband, Michael Buss.
Okay, and your name?
My name's Linda Telgarski.
Linda? Please go ahead.
Sorry,
We
through
live
the chair.
immediately adjacent to the property.
Could you just adjust your microphone?
Yeah,
a
no,
little bit
you
lower?
can bend it down.
Sorry.
There we go. There we go. Perfect.
We live immediately adjacent to the property to the west at 729 3rd Street. We're in a new duplex. We are opposed to this appeal for some of the reasons already been mentioned. This is asking for, in our view, a major variance, not a minor variance, 100% reduction in terms of the 2 meters that would be going up because this is a 212 roof pitch. Money, time, and thought is spent on towns and cities and municipalities in terms of their bylaws and building plans. And in the absence of compelling reasons for variances, we think there should be compliance. We bought our home on the understanding that there was bylaws and that in the future, lots like this would be developed in accordance with that. We all love our views in Canmore. We love our light in the winter. It's things that we crave. And my understanding is the 612 pitch is very different than a 212 pitch. There is a duplex to the west of our house that is a butterfly roof or inverted roof. And as far as we can see, it's just 2 stories with nothing else on top. So it can be done, but in asking for this extra 2 meters, we are just simply opposed. We would ask this appeal board to take into account the bylaws that have been developed and to take into account that we all sort of rely on those. We know the town is looking into the effect of massing based on the proposed new land use bylaws, and so we know this is an issue. Personally speaking, aesthetically, we love the home we bought with the 612 pitch, and we would just ask that you take into account our views on this.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I would ask a question, given what we've heard the appellant say and the diagram showed, with the massing seeming to be comparable or similar between the two, how does that affect your opinion with what the 612 may have the same massing?
It's hard to tell exactly, especially from a front view, because the 612 pitch is much, much steeper. I'm not an engineer or a planner, but it seems to me that there must be a reason why they've not allowed buildings just to go straight up on a 212 pitch as high as a 612 pitch. So even today when I was thinking about it, I drew a picture of, say, 3 roof lines at a 612 pitch side by side from the front, and then ones that are 212. And there just has to be a mass difference as far as I can see. And even with some dormers, there might be some more mass coming out, but not all. Like, for example, our duplex, it's just a 612. So there's quite a bit of open space that you can then see, and the light comes through, and just, there's some views of the mountains we all crave. That's why we're here. So while I understand what the appellant is saying, it just makes common sense to me that if it was going to be the same thing, then the planners would have said 612, 212, go ahead. Just build up those walls, that's okay. They're essentially the same thing. And when I look at my little diagram, to me, they can't be the same thing.
Okay.
And I'm going to live there and see their wall. So.
Absolutely. Are there other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for
Thank you for
coming
your
and
time.
speaking today. I would now ask if there's anyone else who is speaking in opposition to the appeal. Sir, are you speaking in opposition, or?
Well, I'm Michael Wolfersog, and I'm the next door neighbor to the east.
Yeah.
And I have to say, this is all very new to me.
Yeah.
And I don't have a lot of knowledge about this, but
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not saying you have to speak. I was just wondering if you were wanting to speak in opposition or speak at all.
I will support the opposition to
Okay.
this proposal.
Okay.
Good.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I would ask the clerk if, besides the correspondence that's in the package, has there been any additional correspondence received? No? Okay. And I don't see anyone else here that would be speaking in a neutral fashion. So we'll move on. I would ask administration, do you have any closing remarks or comments or clarification?
So I do just want to clarify that I misspoke with the massing. That previous massing that was shown was the front, not the back that I said.
Great.
And I think that's it.
Great. Thank you. Any questions of administration? Yes, Ms. Harding.
I'm not sure if any members of administration that are here today can answer this question, maybe Marcus. This particular section of the land use bylaw has been challenging, and we have seen it in front of this board already. And I know that there was some discussion around it in the current review of land use bylaw discussions. Is there any update or anything that about how administration is considering this going forward?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. So you've been looking at this for a while, and we understand there is the frustrations with, the single pitch roofs, the butterfly roofs, versus the traditional, like the 612 roof pitches. So what we are looking at is an option, which could allow for single pitch roofs to be proposed under what we're calling an envelope model, which would essentially just give you a box to work within, and as long as you fit within that box, then you would comply. So what that allows you to do is, and the actual shape of the box, it's not just an actual box. It does have a roof pitch on it, which would allow for some projections and that stuff. But essentially, if you could fill this envelope, then you would comply with land use bylaw. So there would be less of this. If you're 212, 312, then you have to reduce, by X amount. It's if you fit the box, you comply. So we will be moving forward with that at second reading on September 3rd. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, the staff report.
Is it simple enough to say yes or no, this would fit into the new box?
I'll just, tell you what, keep note of the comments you'd like to say, because the appellant will get an opportunity to provide the last comments as well, okay? Yes.
Is there other questions about the envelope model, or?
Yes, I'm going to leave that be since it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
But my question is that the staff report references the land use bylaw with regards to building heights and says that this is intended to be in accordance with policies of the municipal development plan. Are there any higher level policies in the MDP or elsewhere that this board should be considering other than the land use bylaw?
There's nothing else in particular to residential development. We do have the architectural guidelines and standards, but those do not apply to residential. That's mainly commercial and larger, like the multifamily developments that are usually 6 units and up, so nothing else to be considered in this matter.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford?
Thank you. Mr. Henry, can you answer the question that was raised by one of the opposition of why there is a differential height for a 212 roof versus a 612 roof?
For sure. As we all know, called the mountain views in town, they're like something that everybody cherishes here. And the original intent on with the height calculations and the reduction in the heights, depending on the roof form, just goes back to massing and maintaining those views. So if you look at a traditional 612 gable pitch roof, the massing is smaller when you're looking at it from the front. Whereas if you had, say, a single pitch roof, if you flip that on the front view, what you're getting is this versus this. And I wish I had a diagram to actually show that to you, but hopefully the hand motions are clear for you. So it's just about maintaining, the architectural elements in town and really preserving the views of the mountains, which we all cherish so much. So that's the principal reason why we have the reductions depending on the actual roof form shown.
And so that takes into consideration that massing affects the neighbors?
Yes.
From their view sheds, et cetera?
Right. However, as you can see in this image, or in the massing models here shown, there is a little bit of controversy about whether or not a single pitch roof actually creates a more mass over, say, a gabled, like a standard roof form. So, and that's one of the things that we're looking, to address here with the envelope model, and that should, really help to ease the issues that we're having with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Henry, with these massing model images, I just want to know if, do you believe it's a fair representation of the 612 pitch that's been put in there? Like, are we actually, or do you have concerns with the representations at all?
I don't have any concerns. It's hard to actually tell for certain if it is 612, but on the basis of the roof forms that we can see, it does appear to be in line with the 612 roof forms that was standard within land use bylaw. And just to go back to the applicants, like the question of would this fit in the envelope model, I can't say. I don't know. I'd have to see it within the envelope model itself, so that's not a determination I can make today.
So am I viewing this correctly, though, if it's a fair representation of 612, that what is being proposed at 212 roughly fits within the massing that would have been a 612? Is that what this is showing?
Roughly, yes. There are the projections, as you can see in white.
Right.
But if you look at the overall comparison, you can clearly see that with a 612 roof form, there is, some more mass, but it's also a trade-off of where the mass is actually shown. So as you can see here in the rear, looking at these areas right here, the massing would be slightly larger and protruding outwards, whereas up top on the upper portion, you can see it's a less mass.
Right. And the next photo, I think the side photo, it shows the white sticking out in some places that the 612 would not.
Correct.
But where the dark is, particularly in the front, back, and in the middle, it looks like the 612 would have greater massing in those locations.
Correct.
Right, okay.
So it's a bit of a trade-off, right?
Yeah.
If there was a large majority of white being shown here, I think we would have a larger concern.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at the massing model and what you're seeing here, we're just going to have to look at the actual, it's called like the trade-offs, and I guess what you would deem is appropriate.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions of administration? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, does the appellant have any closing remarks, comments, or clarification? And I assume, Mr. Kidner, that you've passed on to Mr. Mullen? Yeah. I mean, we talked about it. Okay, good.
Again, it comes back down to the massing, and this massing diagram just shows a specific building that we've done in the past, We have shown in other projects what potentially could be built with the 612 pitch. This one was reduced to avoid going to any kind of DP application. So at that time, the developer didn't want to do that and go straight to building permit. So what could be proposed as a bigger square footage, which would require an SSR at that point, which then would trigger the DP process, would be filling up that top floor with more dormers. So the biggest thing with an actual 612 is there could be a lot more massing compared to that massing diagram itself.
So I'm just trying to understand something. Is this what's proposed for the subject property? Is it this the diagram?
In the white.
In the white. When you're referring to the other property, that one was a little bit smaller?
Yes, it was, each unit was 200 square feet smaller as well. So.
Right. But this is the one that pertains to this property?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to make sure. Are there any questions? No, thank you very much, Mr. Mullen. Actually, Mr. Mullen, sorry. While you're by the mic, I should ask you a question. Does the appellant feel that you've had a fair hearing?
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. This hearing is now concluded. In accordance with provincial legislation, the board is required to hand down its decision within 15 days from today's date. No decision is binding until the board issues a written decision. And as I mentioned, we will try to do that quicker than the 15 days, as fast as we can. So thank you very much, everyone. I would like to make a motion to adjourn today's hearing. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. All right. I call to order the business meeting of the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board for July 4th. Are there any changes to the agenda? Then I'll move adoption of the agenda as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. We'll turn first to the minutes of May 22nd, 2019. And I think I noticed Madam Clerk, if on page 4 of 6, right at the top, I think that it was not captured correctly what the board said. Whereas it says the board said they can accept the request with conditions or deny it with reasons, what I think is meant there is the board can approve the development permit with conditions or deny it with reasons. So if we could just replace accept the request with approve the development permit, because that then makes sense. Okay. And just a small thing on page 5 of 6, middle paragraph, if we could capitalize Cougar Creek.
Sorry, which minutes are you looking at? May 22nd?
Yeah. Okay, and those are the only editorial comments I had. Anybody catch anything else that was in here?
Just
Yes.
one small thing.
Starting?
Page 5 of 6 and page 5 of 6 and page 6 of 6. The same line is at the bottom of page 5 as is on the top of page 6. It just needs a, well, one says the applicant agreed and one says the appellant agreed. But it's duplicated.
Yeah, I did ask the applicant as well. The applicant was present. So I asked the appellant and the applicant just to make sure both were covered. So that's okay. That's okay. This was. You're right. It is confusing though. Anything else, Adam? Or yeah,
On the top of page 2, I believe the staff person's name is Mr. Welsh, W-E-L-S-H. In one place it says Welsh, and in the next it says Welsh.
right. I noticed that as well. It is inconsistent. So if you could just find the proper, whether it's E or A, and just make sure it's throughout. Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Councillor
that
Sanford.
was the change I was going to just
Okay.
suggest to you.
Great, thank you. Seeing nothing else, then I would move adoption, where are we here? Make a motion to approve the minutes of the appeal hearing dated May 22nd as amended. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Now turning to the business meeting minutes. If we could just add in numbering to match the agenda. The agenda actually refers to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you look in the agenda package that was circulated for that meeting, and if you could just insert numbers. So where it says, like I think next scheduled business meeting, I think is probably number 4, and then other business is number 5. There's no numbering in the minutes. And perhaps that's the way it's always been, but I've just noticed it, so let's start a new tradition. Yeah, it should each number. So number 1, call to order. Number 2, adoption of the agenda. Number 3, adoption of the minutes. Number 4, next scheduled business meeting. Number 5, other business. Great, thank you. Anything else on those minutes? Seeing nothing, I would move adoption of the business meeting minutes of Thursday, May 22nd as corrected. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we have another meeting scheduled. And other business, going back to the agenda here, is none. So I will make a motion for adjournment. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay.